Connecting with color. Color is everywhere. It is all around us. And whether we realize it or not, whether we are artists or not, we make choices, color choices every day, whether it's how we're decorating our house or the color of pillows we might choose, artwork we might choose, clothing. Maybe it's how we dress, what colors we put together when putting a skirt or a pair of pants with a shirt. So it's all around us. And what I'm going to do is we're going to go through and do some exercises. We're going to look at the color wheel. We're going to look at maybe some cool colors and how that makes us feel. Some neutrals, what the artist's intent was, and maybe how we respond to these colors. We may have our favorites, but we're going to hopefully enjoy doing some exercises and learning a little more about color. Okay, the first thing that we are going to make is a booklet to house all of your exercises, color theory exercises that we're going to do. And I'm going to show you how to make this. This is really simple. It's an accordion fold book, and you can open it page at a time. You can pull the whole thing out and have a long line of things that are in it. You can also flip it over and add things to it. So this is going to be what houses our exercises, and what you're going to need is some kind of, you can make this any size you want. It can be, mine's 6x6, I believe it is. Oh, 6.5 by 6.5. Well, I'm wrong. But I'm going to make one that's 6x6. But you could make something bigger. You could make something, vertical if you wanted a book like that. However you want to make it. But here is the basic concept of how to do this. You need to find paper that's heavier than your copier paper. And you can get sketchbooks of mixed media paper. It's, let's see, I think it's 184 pounds. And you can tell that it's thicker. Okay? It doesn't have to be that thick, though. Any kind of sketchbook paper that is something that will withstand your wet media. So we're going to be using paint. We're going to be collaging in this. And you want to make sure that your paper will withstand that. And if you are just getting copier paper, that's only 24 pound, and that's not going to hold up to anything. You might can draw with a pencil, but it won't hold up very well. So you want a nice sturdy paper. This is some paper I found that I think it's 100 pound. So it's not as heavy as the mixed media, but still, this will hold up really well, and that's what I use to make the inside of this book. So let me show you how we're going to do this. If you want this to be square, so I made this 6 inches. So I'm going to come and mark off 6 inches all the way across here. The pencil. And that's going to be where I fold. So I'm going to say 6, 6, 6, and 6. So this comes out even. On some of these, if this is too short and you want a long piece, I'm going to show you how you can add a tab to it from another panel. But first of all, we're just going to take this and fold on that line. And one thing that you can do that's kind of neat, if you're not sure whether you're folding on the grain or not, you can come in and make a score line. And you can do that with a bone folder or something that's sharp. I wouldn't do it with a knife because you might cut through. But I'm going to go ahead and just fold it like this and see if it works. So here I'm getting on that little notch. I'm folding over, and see, I'm making sure that this lines up. This may be kind of old and dirty looking, but this is a bone folder, and it's something that you can purchase it in all different sizes. But it allows you to make nice creases, and like I said, you can come in and actually put your ruler down and make a line with this, and it will help it to fold easier. So let's say I've done this. I got the 6 inches. Really, all I have to do is just match it up, folding back and forth, accordion style. And then I flip this over, and you can tell it's matching up with my lines pretty good. Kind of. Okay. So that's going to be one part. Now, chances are you're going to want this longer. So I'm going to fold another piece. I'm going to come right back and show you how to glue the tabs together so you can make a longer accordion fold, or another word for it is concertina book. So let me do that and I'll be right back. So now I've got 2 of these folded. They're the exact same length. Remember I did the first one with 4, it has 4 panels. I did another one just like it and it has 4 panels. But what I'm going to do on this one, I'm going to sacrifice one of the panels. I'm going to measure, you could make a tab. I'm going to make mine 1.5 inches. It could be 1 inch. I wouldn't go smaller than 1 inch though. I'm going to make the line here. I'll just tear on that line actually. Now I've got a tab, and you see that tab? That tab is going to go just like this. I'll have to refold, but that's okay. I'll put glue right here on this part, and with glue, I'm just going to say use a glue stick. I love the Yoo-Hoo glue sticks. They seem to be stronger and not quite. I think some of the kids glue sticks, you can use them, but they aren't quite as strong. So I like this brand. I'm going to go ahead and put a lot of glue on there. And just hook this in here. Well, now, see it's glued on that side, but it's backwards, so I need to make my folds. Just reverse them. So now you've got the inside of this, and that should be enough. It's up to you if you want to make it larger, but we will just go with this one right here. And what you're going to need for the covers, we're going to put a cover on this, and the reason I'm putting a cover on it is, like with any book, you don't want the content to be damaged, so this is a thinner, type paper than a cardstock. So I went and got I just found some crescent board. If you don't have anything like that, you could do this with corrugated cardboard if you want to. But what we're going to do is an exercise on the front cover and the back cover. And then once we get those exercises done, I'm saying do the exercises, decorate the front and the back cover first. And once we get that done, we'll come back in with the glue stick and we will glue these flaps on here. So you'll end up with something like this. See how I glued that in? Before moving on to some exercises that we're going to put in our book, let's take a look at the color wheel and some of the color families within that. So there are a lot of colors that you see on the color wheel, different variations, different color families. But if you had to pick and choose 5 colors, let's say you're going out to buy some paint, 5 colors that you would need in your collection that you could mix everything else from, go with a yellow, red. These are your primaries, yellow, red, blue. Those are your 3 primary colors. Then you're going to come in with a black and a white. With all those 5 colors, if you had nothing else, you could mix a ton of tints and shades and secondary colors, just all kinds of different color families. I taught a class not too long ago on color theory, and although there are lots of really neat color wheels that you can purchase, I decided to make my own. And what I did was include little arrows that I can kind of go through and see if something, for instance, let's say complementary. Complementary is across the color wheel from each other. So I know I can say red and green, they're complements. I've written that up here. Analogous might be your red, your orange, your red-orange, your orange. Maybe you put, it has all of these together. Analogous colors are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. And they seem to there's a pleasantness about them because they're just right next to each other. They're in kind of the same color family. And it doesn't matter whether it's warm, like oranges, or maybe it's analogous over here in the blue and green family. Okay? And I've written that up there, analogous. Warm and cool colors. Usually what you do is the color wheel is divided to where one side is warm and one side is predominantly cool. And I looked it up to see why are they called warm and cool? It's just for the very reason that you would assume. The fact that these colors that are warm make you feel warm. And anything like fire, heat, anything that is warm, reds, oranges, yellows, the sun, they would be referred to as warm colors. And sometimes even your yellow greens, it's a green, which is a cool color, but it has more yellow in it. That might even be included in there. Then you look over here and you look at your blues and blue greens and your blue violets and purples. A lot of those colors are things that they're cool colors, and they make us feel a sense of coolness. Maybe it's nighttime. Maybe we're thinking about the blue sky and green grass. There's a feeling. So the warm, cool reference is referring to how you feel about these colors. Now, I had a friend who said, so that means that all warm colors are lighter. Yellow is lighter than purple. That's why it's warm. Well, that's not the case. So what I did on the color wheel was I made little slots with things that you can pull out. So yellow, my friend was saying yellow is warm because it's lighter than purple. But then when you start adding, you make tints by adding white. You make shades by adding black. And look at that. I mean, that came from yellow and black, and that's pretty dark. So lightness and darkness has nothing to do with whether something is warm or cool. And this color wheel just reflects, I'm kind of an art nerd, so it was kind of fun to make. You don't have to make anything that's complicated. But like over here with my purple, well, we'd say, oh, that's cool because it's dark. Yeah, but look at that. I can add white to it. I can make all kinds of tints. And tints are when you add white. Shades are when you add black to it. So it just kind of illustrates a little bit of your tints and shades, and that it doesn't have to be warm and cool colors don't have to be light or dark. Here's another one. So tetratic. We're talking about something that it's two complementary. So what I did was create an overlay sheet, and I'm looking and saying, oh, okay, where those corners meet, that means a color family of blue, orange, yellow, purple. That would be a tetratic color combination. If I turn it around, I might say, oh, we could have Oh, look, we could have the red and green, those are complementaries, and the yellow and purple. But it's got 4 different colors in it. Triadic. Triadic is something that's equal, 3 colors that are equal distance on the color wheel. So the first thing that comes to mind is probably the primary colors that we've talked about. Okay, but they're equal distance. So as you move this around, any of them that are equal distance would be called triadic. Tertiary, that's going to be any of the colors that have that double name to it, blue-green. It's where you mix a blue color, where you mix a primary color, which could be blue, and you mix it with a secondary, and you come up with blue-green. Or if you mixed a primary of yellow, mixed it with green, a secondary, you come up with yellow-green. So that's what triadic is. Split complementary. That's where, remember I told you about complementary could be this, red and green, it could be blue and orange, something directly across. But if I took part of that and split it, that's split complementary. Okay? So this is a good reference color wheel, and I hope that in this little book that we're making, you'll be able to refer back and have references, because I can honestly tell you, as an artist, I don't memorize all of this. I mean, I can say something, oh yeah, that's probably analogous or warm and cool, but I don't go around when I choose my color families, if I'm going to work on a painting or whatever, I don't necessarily pull this out and do some analytics about exactly what color family it is. But I think it helps to know a little bit about this and to figure out if you are choosing, maybe it's clothing, maybe you're painting a room and you're wanting to know what would be a good color that would complement the color of couch I've got. What pillows, what would go with it? These are just some ideas that can kind of help you be aware of that. And if you're doing your own artwork, some colors. A lot of people don't know where to start with colors in their artwork. And so these are some starting points to kind of help you. We've been talking about color families on the color wheel, but let's look at some real live examples. Here's a piece of artwork where it looks like the artist used predominantly cool colors, but also with a touch of oranges in there, which would be complementary. Then we have a painting by Fairfield Porter that uses analogous colors with the oranges and the yellows and the tans, the warm colors. We look at fashion and we see the 2 ladies here that are wearing complementary colors, complementary family colors. Then we're looking at some interior design. It looks like this one is based on complementary colors with your blues and accents of oranges. And then the final one is primary, but if you'll notice, primary color family does not have to be your sharp red, blue, and yellow, but it can be muted tones of those colors. So in looking at this color wheel, let's use this as a reference for what we're going to do to decorate the front and back covers of our accordion fold book. And what I would like for you to do as an exercise is to choose some kind of color family for the front. We're going to do a collage on the front, going to do a collage on the back. And I want you to be able to label it, be able to know what it is. So I went through and chose magazine clippings. It could be construction paper, anything that you have around. And I decided on this one, it's analogous. So I pulled some reds, some rusty colors. I kind of did this color family right here. And I would say that's analogous. Whereas on the front, I decided I was going to do shades of blues and maybe some blue greens, different shades of blues. And I was going to make that complementary. So I'm doing a complementary by putting just 3 spots of orange in there. So let me get some samples and I'll show you. We'll work on one together, and then I'll show you how to attach it to your book. So I don't want you to think I'm too crazy for doing this. I wouldn't have done this for myself, but because I was teaching this class, I went ahead and took all kinds of papers from magazines or construction papers, whatever, and I divided them into baggies that were colors. So like these are my oranges. Here's a bag with my reds, and here's a bag yellows, blues, purple, green, and some neutrals. So since I finished the class, I have not unpacked these because it took time to sort and I just don't have it in me to mix them all up again. So I'm going to pull from these bags, and I'm kind of looking and thinking maybe the analogous. I'm kind of taken. It's springtime, so I'm kind of taken with blues and greens and the weather outside. So I think maybe I'll do analogous. I might do the blue and green families. And when you save scraps, I just want to show you this, for collaging, you may cut something out and what's left over can be the most fun shape that you might want to use. So I'm going to challenge you now to go around, start collecting some things, see what you come up with. And I'm going to work on this. I'm going to glue it down. I'm going to glue down pieces with just the glue stick, and I'll be right back to show you what I came up with. I'm going to call this one finished, and I just did the analogous colors with blues and greens. And that's going to be my front cover. I'm going to do the same thing, but maybe a different color family on the back. Maybe I'll do triadic or something like that. But I'll do the same on the back, but just to show you how to attach it, you're going to use glue, and the way I like to do it, I think earlier I'd mentioned this was 6.5. My inside is 6, and so what I did was try to make it so that there was a little bit of lip around my book. So there's a little overlap of the cover. So if you're whatever size you're making your book, make sure that you increase just a little bit, no more than 1/4 of an inch, but just a little bit so that you have some type of leeway around the edges. And so what I'm going to do is just put the glue on here, get lots of glue on it, and go ahead and center it and press it down. So I've gone ahead and put the glue on the paper, pressing this down, get it nice and even. And then when I do my other piece, I will line it up on the back here and make sure that all of that's even and glue it in place. Okay, let's practice mixing some paint colors. And what I want you to know is that not all blues, reds, and yellows are the same. And you're going to get different secondary colors when you mix different primary colors. And so just be aware of that. So I think what you probably need to do is just get a sketch pad with regular paper that, once again, this is a little thicker than the 24-pound, but it's not too bad. We're going to cut into this and use it as collage. And so you're going to make a color wheel in the book, but instead of painting it, I think it might be easier if you mix paints on here and got the shades you wanted, then cut those shapes and glue them into your book. So the first thing we're going to do is look at, I've got some blues here. I've got cobalt blue. These are just some old acrylics that I pulled from my stash. We've got phthalo blue, which has kind of a greener tint to it. And we have, where is it? Ultramarine blue. I must have put that back in the box. This one's an ultramarine blue. So all different shades of blue, but let's first of all go in here and say, well, I'm going to make my primaries. I'm just going to say, let's put some of this yellow down. And I want you to take a look at how that looks different than this yellow. One is I don't know if you can see that. I hope you can. One is warmer. That is a warmer yellow, and that is a cooler yellow. That's going to make a difference when you mix your paints together. So let's try to take those yellows and see. Let me tell you which one those are. That was a Hansa yellow medium. This bottom was a little warmer. And then the middle one was a cadmium yellow light. So you can just kind of tell the difference. So if I took a little of that cooler yellow, and I'm going to make sure I have got it to where you can see me here. And I'm going to mix it with, this is the cobalt. Let's see what happens with just a little bit of cobalt in there. What kind of green will I get? Okay. I'm going to just put it on like this. There's one kind of green. Now, what would happen if I mixed that same yellow over here with a different kind of blue? Let's try the phthalo. Remember I told you that phthalo blue had a lot of green in it? It's a cooler blue. And you see the difference? Look at the difference in those two shades of green. By mixing, I'm mixing still, you know, the yellow and blue to create a green. Let's try mixing it with some of this yellow with a little bit of ultramarine. What will happen with that? This paint is old and it's starting to get kind of thick here. It's different. It's almost like an olive green. And when you think about it, ultramarine blue can have kind of a purplish tint. So I need to get more paint, don't I? It can have kind of a purplish blue tint. You see that? So that mixed with the cool yellow creates kind of an olive green. It's not quite as vivid. Whereas if I took this phthalo and I don't know if you can, hopefully you can see this. This that has more of a green tint to it, and this has got more of a purpley tint to it. Both are considered blues. So what I want you to do is put out your primaries, whatever primaries you have, but make sure it's you know a shade of red, yellow, and blue, and then just practice mixing and see what colors you get. And we're going to after we get lots of colors mixed, we're going to use these, cut them up, and use them as the collaging pieces. So, like in this one, what I did was take and draw a circle, just kind of a circle as a boundary, and I'm going to come in and place these. Before I glue them in, I'm going to make sure they're in the right spot. I can come in and label them. I might even want to write on there for future reference what yellow and blue did I mix to get that particular green. This is where you can take notes, and this will help you later on to know how to mix some colors. So I'm going to work on my samples and then come back and start doing the collage. Let's practice mixing some oranges using a warm red and a cool red. We're going to just kind of see what happens here. So if I take the warm red, and this could be, I could try any other kind of red, but I'm just going to do this one right now, just so you can see the difference. Now, I'm thinking that is a really nice shade of orange. That's nice. I can keep adding yellow to it, make a yellow orange. Okay, so let's see now if I take that same yellow and I mix it with, this is alizarin crimson, and it's kind of, you can tell it's red, but it's kind of, it has a little more blue in it or something, a little more purplish. But it should make some kind of orange. Let's just see what kind it makes. Can you see the difference with these? Mixing the cool red with a yellow gives me orange, but it's a more muted color. And that's because I said originally that alizarin crimson has a tiny bit of blue in it. It just has a little bit of a purplish, a red-violet cast to it. And by adding that into it, it makes it a muted orange. Whereas mixing just a straight warm red and a warm yellow, you get a really bright, vibrant orange. Some people ask, what is the difference? How do I know what's a warm primary and a cool primary? Well, one thing you can do, and I'm just doing this on a piece of paper, but this could be something that you go ahead and put in your book that we're making. But, you know, I might look and say, the yellows, I've got it listed cool primaries, and there's a section for yellow. And maybe I'm going to put that there and label it, because I think that's a cool yellow. I may come in and say, oh, I know a warm red. I remember that this was a warm red, so I'm going to put that right there. And I will go in and label that. That's a chart that you can complete, once again, in the book or on a separate sheet of paper. But it might be cool to put that in the book and then label what each one of these would be. What I did on one of my pages, and you may want to try this, is when we were talking about cool colors and warm colors, I was showing you the chart that you could make, that you could put your warm reds and your cool reds and your warm yellows and your cool yellows. And the same with blue. You can make a chart that way, but also on the book pages, I did one where as I was mixing my color, anytime I came up with something that I thought was cool, I just made a little mark. Anything that was warm, I would make a mark of that color. And if you notice, some of these had white mixed with them, some of them had black. They're varying values of lights and darks, at tints and shades, but this is a cool color family and this is warm color family. So that might be a page that you also want to work on. So after mixing up lots of colors, I'm going to start creating the color wheel. And on this book, I went ahead and painted it in. I drew it in and painted it. On this one, I'm going to do a collage. And I would say just cut out those shapes, any shape you want. It could be little circles. It could be flower petals. It could be little squares or rectangles. Start putting them in the right place, in the correct place, position on the color wheel. And the thing you need to watch for is that before you glue them, make sure that your primaries are right across from each other. See, there's purple and yellow. Here's red and green. Here's blue and orange. Make sure that they are not, messed up, that they've got the right position. And then once they're in the right position, glue them down, and you can add what those names are. You might, if you have room on there, you might want to write what type of red and yellow you mixed to make these, or what type of blue and red you mixed. You could even do that on your second page if you want. So this is all kind of an information book for you, and it's how you set it up will be your choice. So on one of your pages in your book, let's work with tints and shades. And once again, you can do this on separate paper and then collage onto the paper in your book if you want to, instead of painting directly. But a tint, and that's T-I-N-T, is when you add white to a color. So I'm going to take, I'm just going to take this red, And I've got this color. And I'm going to just keep adding white to it. More and more white. So as you add white to it, it obviously becomes lighter. And try to get, it's kind of like a value scale. Try to get your value to where you're getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And we are also going to do an exercise here where we're going to work on an object using some of this tint and shade combination. So just keep going until you get down to just a super pale color on that. That's kind of like that monochromatic color family. When you have one color and you made tints and shades of that one color. So let's take the same red and we're going to add black to it. So that's going to be your shade. So I've got my red. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of black. The black will kind of overtake it, so you have to kind of try to just add a little at a time. You see it starts getting darker. But here's the thing, as we keep adding black to this, remember the red is a warm color, and as you keep adding black to it, yeah, it's going to look pretty much like a black color, but guess what? It's a warm black because you've got red in it. You've got more red in it. So that black is going to be different than when I get all the way down here than if I had taken the color blue and started adding black to it. That would be more of a cool shade when I got toward the end, when I got toward the darkest value. A tone is when you add gray to a color. And you have to mix your gray first. Make sure I get my brush clean. You have to mix your gray first. So you're going to take a little white over here, a little black. And that's kind of like a nice gray. Oops, got red in it, sorry. And then I'm going to keep just adding my color to it. So that's going to be called a tone when you add gray. So you've got a tint, add white, shades, or when you add black. Tone is when you add gray to it. So let's take a look at what happens if we add a color's complement to it. So if you want to, we've talked about shades, you're adding black to it. Sometimes that can dull a color a bit. But if you take the complement, so the complement of red is green, and if I mix those two, see if I've got enough space here. That can desaturate your color. That can tone it down a little bit. So sometimes if you always are reaching for the black and you're wanting to create different colors and different values, just adding that complement can make a difference. So that will be something we'll try here in a little bit. So if you see that green, I put more green in with that one, having a little red in it, it's still green, but it has desaturated or kind of calmed it down a little bit to where it's not the bright green that it was. And you can do that with adding the complement. Next, I want to show you something about unity. So I've put out the 3 primary colors, and we're going to say on the color wheel that was a triadic color scheme. And let's say I want to use those colors in my painting, but they're great together, but I want something, I want unity. I want something that pulls those colors together. So one trick is, like for instance, here, I'll just put these on here. I'll put it on here like I've got this bright yellow. I've got a nice, I'm going to just do this so I don't have to wash the brush. I've got a nice red. And I've got a nice blue. So if I take and mix all these three colors together, I create kind of a mud. And sometimes people will call this the mother color. And then if you take that, let me just show you. I'm going to mix a little bit here. This, a little bit of this. I'm going to mix all this together. And you get something that's can be kind of a gray color, a muddy color. But when that is a little bit of it at a time is mixed with each of these colors, it creates a color family. You still have your yellow, red, and blue, but I'm going to just mix this. I'm going to mix just a tiny bit with that. And here's my yellow. Once again, let's see, and then take the red. Mix just a tiny bit with it. And what you're doing is this color family now has something in common. You know, you're putting something in there. It's a little bit of everything. It has something in common with each other, and that can create a nice unity in your piece. It doesn't have to be much, just a little bit. Sometimes I do this when I'm working on my palette and I'm mixing colors. I'll just pick up just a dab of things, of the colors I'm using, and use them in the colors in the painting. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's like you've still got your yellow, red, blue, but you've done something to make them they have something in common. They have a relative in common, okay? And you've put them all in there, and that creates a unity in colors. On this next exercise, I'd like for you to focus on monochromatic color schemes. So what I want you to do is find an object. I chose a pear. I had a photograph of it. And what I ended up doing was converting that to a grayscale or to black and white. And you can do that on your phone, your iPad, but that will help you to see the values instead of looking at the color, because we're going to do something with a monochromatic color scheme. I'm going to take my one object that I showed you, and I chose the pear, and I converted it to black and white. I've drawn that onto my paper, kind of outlined it, and I'm going to use a monochromatic color family. So, monochrome. And what that means is one color. And with one color, I chose green. You're going to add white, black, and gray. And the interesting part about doing that is the reason you convert it to black and white is so that you can just see the values. You're not looking at colors. But I'm going to go in and just start adding. Well, let me show you one that I did earlier in the book. I think what I'm going to do with this one is paint it on my pad and maybe cut it and put it in here. That's one I did, and I just chose a square, a box, a cube, and I made red my color, and I added the black, white, and grays, and that's the color family I came up with. And then I put notes on here about what I added, so that may be something that you want to do in your book. But let's start off with this. Maybe, gosh, maybe I'm going to, I know that green, if I add a little white to it, what do I get with it? It's lighter on this side, so I might add some of the light over here. Let's just see what colors we get. If I come in with, I'm just going to see what happens if I keep adding. How light can I get with this? It's kind of a real pale foam green, and I'm using acrylic, so I can, if I don't get the right shades and values on here, I can go back in and paint over them as many times as I need to. Let's see what happens if we take that same green and add a little gray to it. That's kind of interesting. Let's see what happens if we take the same color green and add a little black to it. And one tip is, when you probably already know this, but when you're mixing a real heavy color like a black, don't start with your black, start with your color, and then add a little bit of time, that black to it, because it can be overpowering and you'll end up with a quart of paint by the time you get the color you want. So I could get this pretty dark. I know that background was a very dark value. Maybe that was what goes in there. But can you kind of see what I'm doing here? It's like that is really dark, but my goodness, it looks like a dark pine green. It looks like it has green undertones in it. So I'm going to say, while I work on mine, go ahead and find your object, convert it to black and white, have a photograph of it if you want to, and try to match those values by mixing one color and black, white, or gray. I chose to mix a secondary color. I started with green. That was my color. You could start with anything. You could start with a primary color or mix a secondary color. That's going to be up to you. So here's what I came up with. One thing I want you to notice is the paper is getting rippledy, because remember I said the heavier stock paper that's in your book will withstand wet media and paint much better. Once this dries, I can flatten it and probably glue it into my book. But I tried to match the different values, and I tried to just mix the black, white, and gray. Now, and that would be a monochromatic color scheme. Let's try something different with the same exact picture, only instead of mixing the black with it, let's tone down the color green with its complement. So that means I'm going to take this same color green and I'm going to put it on a different palette and have some red that I mix with it instead of the black. I'll have some white too, but I'm going to mix it with its complement, and let's just see how those colors turn out. So here is an example of, we just did the monochromatic, where you mix the black, white, and gray with the primary color, the one color you want, and I chose green. And then with this one, I did the same exact drawing, and I took that same color green and I mixed it with tiny bits of red with it. So green was still my primary color, and I mean primary as my main color. And I mixed it with just dabs of red to tone down the green. And then I also had some white, but I didn't put any black in it. And so in doing that, you can tell that the darks, it's funny how the darks, everything in here has green undertones. It's got some red mixed with it, and that has toned down the green, but it's got some, it all has kind of a green undertone. So these are two exercises I want you to try. Now, I'm not saying if you paint a picture, you're going to do it exactly this way or exactly that way on your own paintings, but just knowing how mixing a complement reacts to a color versus mixing the black with it. It might help you when you make decisions with your own artwork. Another exercise that you can do in the book, I mean, there are many, many you could do, and I'm just showing you some that I've done. This is one, and I used analogous colors. I drew on, well, I think I used oil pastels or something with this, and I just tried to find as many different analogous color combinations, because remember, that's when things are next to each other on the color wheel. And then I just grouped them together in kind of a little abstract format, and I'm labeling them what colors that they were on the color wheel. Another thing I haven't finished my book. I need to go in and do some more finishing on it. But another thing is, we looked at monochromatic, so let's look at neutrals. Neutrals, you're going to look and say, wow, what is a neutral? A neutral can be a combination, like we've learned, with mixing colors. And if you make the mother color, you can make neutrals. It can be a muddy color with a green tint. It can be grays that have a more blue-gray tint to it, or a warmer tint. It can be warm and cools. But primarily, you're looking at neutrals and saying, well, they don't really have a super color focus. But the interesting part is, you're going to have to forgive my hands. I've got green all over me. But the interesting part is, when you take a neutral, and we even saw this with some of the clothing designs, you're wearing neutrals, but you add one spot of color to it, and it really pops next to a neutral. Think about that in your own work. What can be, maybe your main character in your work are a lot of neutrals, but there's one color that will pop. If you put something like this has almost a green tint to it. So when I put the red on there, I'm just feeling like that makes the neutral gray that's slightly green look more green. It does to me anyway. If I take, what else have I got here? That neutral has more of a purplish tint to it. So what happens if I put its complement on there? The yellow, look at that. That makes that neutral look more purple. Let's try some others, see if I've got any others here that will work. Oh, here's one that's I think that is a little rosier color maybe. And what happens if I take a complement from red and put a green on it? That makes it look more pink. So I may glue these pieces down just to show the contrast, but that's another page that you can do in your book that you've made. We're at the end of our video, Connecting with Color, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that you've gathered some tidbits and learned some things that you can take on your own art journey. Have fun!